Welcome to this week's Sky Cricket podcast. Myself and Nas have been on the road a bit, watching a successful start to Harry Brook's regime as England's white ball captain, and a successful start for Nat Brunt and Charlotte Edwards for the England women, who have brushed aside the West Indies women. So it's been quite an uncompetitive start to the international summer. Maybe all that will change over the next few days. We shall see. Our guest this week, rather nicer in the commentary box than he was with a ball in his hand, Shaun Pollock. Welcome, Polly. 421 test wickets at 23, but clearly not good enough to coach South Africa ahead of the World Test Championship, where they've turned to Stuart Broad instead.
Well, it's local knowledge. It's all that experience with the juke ball. It's
About 8 years here with Warwickshire.
but
You got me out. You got me out in the first over in a final at Lords. If anyone knows how to bowl at Lords, it's you. Come on, man.
I could have got you out of the lemon. Never mind a juke ball. No, I think he's got obviously lots of knowledge, and I think it was quite inept of them really to get him in just to give a bit of an insight into all the cricket that he's played at Lords, and obviously bowling with that juke ball, which is going to be so important. I see you guys are even trying out a kookaburra on the county championship these days, eh?
Rob
Two
Key,
rounds.
yeah.
Um,
Rob Key's idea.
Yeah, it went to 4 rounds last year, and they've kind of backtracked a little bit for 2. Some of the cricket at the start of last year was the worst first-class cricket I've ever seen, with a kookaburra in English conditions in April. Anyway, how are you? You're over for the World Test Championship, and
Yeah,
you'll be
good.
back later on in the summer when South Africa come back here for the one-day games. Well, what have you been up to recently?
I just did a little bit of the RPL and then been at home and come over to obviously witness this, and hopefully it goes really well for South Africa. It'll be the first time I think these two teams play against each other with a juke ball. So that should be interesting as well. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we're going to go anywhere near being favourites, but I suppose at the end of the day, we were in the final and we've kind of got a chance.
Where are your team at the moment? I mean, you've won 7 tests in a row. Your captain, Kemba Bavuma, is in great nick. You got Kagiso Rabada back from his ban. So where do you think your team are at the moment? I've not played for, what was it, the New Year's test, Cape Town, maybe just around that period. So how you stood?
Yeah, I think those are the two things that are probably in our advantage in many ways, is that both these sides come into this test match without any test experience over the last few months. So what kind of form are they in? What can we kind of expect from these guys? I mean, we don't have anyone in the batting department who averages over 40. I think Ryan Rickleton is the one, and that's due to a 200 he got in that game in Cape Town that you mentioned when the last test was played. Bowling wise, we've got someone like a Rabada who holds his head up with anyone in the world and obviously can win a game single handedly. But if you look at the depth of our bowling attack, is what you've got from Australia. The only thing, other thing that I think works in our favor is, if there's one place in the world where kind of conditions can play a big part in a test match, when you rock up on a particular day and it's overcast and maybe the ball goes around corners, it is England. You probably don't get those conditions. Maybe a certain test match that happened in Johannesburg all those years back with the overcast conditions and the ball hooping around corners played a bit of a part, but we won't go down that road. I know it's bad memories for you boys. But if there's one place that you can maybe win a toss or you can bat really well in the first innings and then clouds come in, you do think England is that kind of place where it can happen. So, as I say, I think batting depth, Australia would have it. Bowling depth, Australia would probably have it. But this team has just found a way over the last 2 years to be able to be competitive and end up winning when they've required a win. We donated 2 test match victories to New Zealand when the SA20 was on, and we've still managed to find a way into the final.
Well, that's a bit disingenuous of you, if you don't mind. I mean, you say we've never played Australia with a Duke's ball. We've not played Australia in this World Test Championship cycle, and you haven't played England, and you're there having played 12 games.
I somehow thought this was a question was coming.
Least of any of the Test match teams in that World Test Championship. I mean, on a serious note, it's a problematic competition, isn't it? I mean, not everybody plays everybody else. There's an uneven number of fixtures. It's very hard to explain, I think, to people who are not cricket aficionados how the thing is worked out. I mean,
Right.
South Africa are top with 69.44% and Australia have 67.54%. I mean, go about explaining that. Not all test playing nations take part, 9 out of 12. It's a problematic competition, isn't it? Albeit
Yeah.
well intentioned.
I think it does need some tinkering. I mean, it is no doubt it's been a great addition because it's given context to so many series and kept the interest for the 2-year period right through to the end. So that's been good. I would definitely agree with you. It does need tinkering. Ideally, in the ideal format,
Don't you
as you
sit on the ICC's cricket committee?
Yes, I have. So these discussions have taken place, and there's lots of fantastic ideas that come to the board through us and the committees we sit on. And as I say, we do discuss and we sit and we say, okay, ideally, we would love everyone to play each other, so that you get it into more of a context. I mean, the amount of cricket that England and Australia play compared to the amount of test matches that we play is also out of kilter, and there's a lot of teams who'd like to get more of it. But as the conditions were set out and as the format was proposed and the fixtures were planned, there's nothing more we can do as South Africans except win what we can and see if it gets us to the final, and it has. I know your overrate issues have caused much of a dilemma. We've discussed those as well. Keezy's brought us a presentation to the RCC on how teams that bowl more fast bowlers are more likely to get penalties than guys who dominate through a spin attack, and it's a valid point. But it is the rules or the way it was set out, and this is where we've come to.
After you went off your long run in the paper the other day, your Bob Willis rant about the system, about the World Test Championship. What is the solution? Because before it, everyone was saying, well, Test cricket's under threat. It needs some kind of context. It needs it to be that every series is important. What do you think the solution is? Because India are not going to play Pakistan. Boards are going to prioritize, as Polly just said. They sent a B, if not C team off to New Zealand, lost 2-0 when the SA20 was on. We've had Graham Smith on the pod who's saying that every time they put a test on, it costs them money. We've had a similar with Zimbabwe, obviously not in the cycle, but my point being is that not everything is level anyway. So what is the solution?
It's very difficult. It's really difficult. I don't have any easy solutions myself, which is why, I'm not one making these decisions. But I've just sat for 2 days or 1 day at the World Cricket Connects meeting at Lord's and listened to the same conversations that were happening last year. Everybody kind of knows what the issues are and what the problems are, but there's nobody yet who I've seen who can say, well, how do we get from A to B? Essentially the World Test Championship is tacked on the Future Tours program. It's an adjunct to the Future Tours program. And England want to play Australia over 5 tests. They want to play India over 5 tests because these are lucrative series. And for a lot of other countries, the test match series are not particularly viable. So it is, when I said it's a problematic competition, I'm not saying that with any easy solutions, by the way.
It probably needs a 3-year period. That's probably what it needs. It gives you more of a chance for everyone to play each other. But you understand, I mean, it was the programming was trying to fit in. You kind of have a T20 World Cup, 1-day International World Cup, and then the Test Championship was kind of meant to go in the middle. It's kind of got a little bit complicated from that perspective. And then, as you say, the financial implications, particularly teams like New Zealand, South Africa, for us to host 3 5-match test series ends up costing. You guys in Australia and maybe sometimes in India are the countries where they can fill stadiums. And it's no issue whatsoever. And you've got that wonderful test culture. And I mean, we're very envious of the amount of crowds you guys can get in for those test matches. But it's not a viable solution. And also timing wise, I mean, a lot of our players, because financially they can't make enough out of playing for South Africa and their country, they want to go and play in these leagues. And it makes sense. You've got your time span of where you can make some money. Whereas you guys were able to hold on to people like Broad and Anderson because you pay them a really good salary for the end of their careers and they could just focus on the test format. So there are definitely more challenges for us compared to maybe the big 3. But it would be nice if we did find a solution. And I think maybe the extra time of been allowing a few more series, like make sure we end up playing against Australia and England, and makes it a little bit more even.
What is the feeling for Test cricket in South Africa? I mean, empty grounds doesn't always equate to a lack of interest.
Mhm.
But we see that South Africa, as you said, sent a third team to New Zealand and have scheduled no men's tests for this calendar year. So, but more broadly, amongst those who like and love cricket in South Africa, what is the feeling for Test cricket there?
I tell you what, I was rejuvenated by this Test Championship. Coming into our domestic season back home, all of a sudden there was a chance that South Africa could qualify. And the interest it created around Test cricket was fantastic. So when we do sit and say, this Test Championship, what has it done? Has it created extra interest for South Africa as a country? It's been massive. I was on the plane today. There's obviously the rugby culture is massive, and the Blue Bulls were flying over to go and compete in the URC final in Ireland. But on the plane, there must have been at least 40 to 50 people who were coming over just to watch this Test match at Lord's because it is such a special occasion. And the attitude towards Test cricket is still there simmering under the surface. It's just kind of the exposure, and maybe some of the better series haven't presented themselves. Whereas now that it has, it's brought that real excitement to the fore.
And it just shows the depth and the class and the strength of South African cricket that they are in this final, albeit flawed system, whatever, but they are. They've made it there, 7 on the bounce. They are in World Cup finals and World Cup semi-finals. Against the odds, you as a sporting nation, a cricketing nation, keep producing. And you touched on it there, and you keep losing players. Heinrich Klaassen has just
Exactly.
announced his retirement. I mean, did that come as a surprise, or is that just regulation now that these things happen?
A huge surprise. I mean, if you look at the next 2 years, what have we got? We've got a World Cup in India, T20 World Cup. So you would think, as a man as prevalent as he is in the shorter format and how well he does, only his reputation could have only been enhanced by going there and playing unbelievable cricket. To follow on from that, less than 12 months after that happens, we've got a 50-over World Cup in our own home country. And if you want to be available for any World Cup, that would be it. So it came as a massive surprise to me, but we do understand. I mean, he probably will commit to 4 leagues around the world. He gets a good whack. I don't know what he gets paid at the other leagues, but he gets a massive whack from playing in the RPL. He's got a young family, and business sense, it kind of does make sense. But there, once again, is where South Africa, we kind of can't hold on to some of these players. If you look at an example of India, for India, you're available for India for 10 months of the year, and then 2 months of the year, you go and play in the RPL, and you don't have any other option of any other league. So they've always got all their players available, whereas South Africa, they don't. And when they play for South Africa, the fees that they get paid aren't anywhere near to equating to what they can make in the leagues.
Touch on Australia, because obviously the World Test Championship, problematic though it is, in my view, is going to be a good occasion. Lords will sell out. 2 good teams, albeit, as you say, on the back of precious little red ball cricket because of the nature of the schedule and when it's played just after the IPL. But it's going to be a good occasion, and every Test match can be enjoyed in itself, really. It doesn't. Obviously, everybody wants the context that the World Test Championship brings, but a good 5-day game, or 6 days in this sense, between 2 good teams can just be a good spectacle in itself. So it's going to be a good spectacle. But then the added context for England is that clearly we've got half an eye on Australia down the line. The Ashes are about 6 or 7 months away or whatever. They're at quite an interesting stage, aren't they, Australia? They're not completely settled themselves. We're not entirely sure who's going to open alongside Usman Khawaja, who's 38 himself. Mark Labuschagne's having a bit of a rough time of it. Sam Constance, a bit of a kind of unknown quantity. I wanted to ask you, Shaun, well, maybe about those things as well, but in particular about that bowling attack of theirs. There's an interesting piece in Cricinfo yesterday which put their quartet, up with any. The recent South African ones, Steyn, Morkel, Vernon Philander, Jacques Callis, McGrath, Gillespie, Warne, and this lot up there in terms of the numbers, but they're all 32 plus now, going up to Nathan Lyon's 37. Put the spinner aside for 1 second. What point did you start to feel as a fast bowler? What age did you start to feel it?
You probably start to feel it at about this age, from probably early 30s till about 35. Say Jimmy Anderson was a bit of an exception, but then he did focus on one kind of particular format. And I think the fact that they play all formats has got to start catching up with him. the other thing is what we saw from Jimmy is what's your backup plan, and when is it time to maybe rip the cord on certain individuals to be able to replace them to give you exposure. I mean, I know they've got the likes of Scotty Boland, who I think is brilliant. I mean, shame if he misses out on this Test championship, he'll really feel a little bit hard done by. But I just think they're formidable. I think the real good thing about them is they've got that ability to adjust their attack to different lengths. Even if I look at some of your English guys that are coming through, they kind of strike me as just back of a length bowlers. A lot of them where they kind of hit this back of a length and it's become the white ball kind of length that you can do. Whereas I think what makes them so exceptional, particularly the three fast bowlers, is the ability to adjust their length. Someone like Mitchell Starc can go full, he can shape it. Cummins is one of those guys who can also get the ball a little bit fuller. Hazelwood's learned the art of being a little bit fuller. Maybe at the start of his career, he was a little bit too short. But the ability to adjust the length and the ability to maybe adjust what they have to do with the juke ball and on a surface at
So would
Lords.
you put them up there with the other great kind of
It's
quartets that I've mentioned? You can go a bit further back and pick any of the four, great West Indies bowlers from the
yeah.
80s. 90s.
I mean, it's difficult to judge them against each other, isn't it? Because I mean, you ideally want them to play against each other and bowl on the same surface, and then see who comes out on top. But there's no doubt from a consistency perspective, the fact that they go in all the different formats, the variety that it possesses as well, the hostility of the attack, to constantly hover around the high 130s into the up to 150s in Mitchell Starc's example. They definitely, I mean, they've got to compare with anyone.
When I asked about kind of when do you start to feel it as a bowler, I was thinking about Jason Gillespie, who 20 years ago, that 2005 series now, he came as one of the outstanding bowlers of the day. And within 3 Test matches, he'd begun to look old. Now, he was only 30. He'd had a history of injuries. So, there can be exceptions either way. You mentioned Jimmy Anderson, who goes into his 40s. But the fascinating thing, I think, from an England perspective, is whether they'll start to feel it. And if they do, how quickly then that decline will come. And it came very quickly with Jason Gillespie. Could you see a scenario where between now and the Ashes or during the Ashes, time will start to catch up very quickly with one or two of those guys?
Yeah, definitely. That's why I think they have to be managed properly as well. I think in the next few months before the Ashes, they need to be used wisely. I think Hazelwood, an example, is one of the guys who's probably picked up more niggles over the last 18 months than the other two. Cummins missed out a little bit. Starc maybe has a bit of issue with his ankle. So it's those kind of injuries. And unless you're in the squad and go into the physio's room and get an understanding about what the niggles are consistently, it's not the freak injuries that are going to keep him out. It's the kind of wear and tear of an ankle injury that just doesn't go away. I mean, my ankle for the last 3 or 4 years of my career, it was like those first few steps in the morning were hectic. You just had to get them warmed up and then you could hopefully get going. But I get the feeling that there are a couple of those niggles that are lurking. And, you know, I think their big focus will be obviously this Test Championship. But then after that, I think for them, it would be massive is the Ashes. I think they'll be doing everything to make sure that those three are nicely rested in order to make sure that they can perform when England can get down there. And I think as you get older too, the kind of focus becomes more on your home Test matches. Or those are the ones you kind of enjoy. That's where the conditions are suited to what you do on a regular basis. And that's maybe where we see Australia going in the next few months.
Should any side be worried about a bowling quartet or a group of bowlers retiring at the same time? They don't like talking about rotation. I think I heard Josh Hazelwood talk about if you're fit, you play, and when you're injured, you're rested. That's how they work it. But it could get to a stage where this great bowling attack all at once goes, or should you just look after the present and let the future take care of itself?
No, I think it's a very valid point, and that's where I think as much as how good Jimmy was, it kind of there was a period where the Jimmy Anderson kind of bowler has kind of never been replaced. You've got other guys who've stepped up, but there's no one who doles that Jimmy length or the Jimmy movement, if you want to put it that way. And that's why, because why would you need more than one of them in your side? And he continuously rolled on and was brilliant while he did his job. But you do have to have those certain replacements behind the scenes. I mean, I think Scotty Boland's a good replacement for now, and he'd probably fill the role of probably at Hazelwood better than anything else. But where is your Mitchell Starc who bowls at 150 and can swing it? Where is your Paddy Cummins who can hover around the mid 140s and really hurry you up? I haven't seen too many. I mean, Spencer Johnson, I know he's one who maybe might be earmarked to come through. But it's definitely a concern. I mean, I know in South Africa, we used to sit there and think, okay, who's the next? Like Alan Donald retires. Well, who steps up? And there were guys who came in. I mean, for example, like a Dale Steyn was massive. And then when he's coming to the back end of his career, up pops Kakisa Rabada. And now we look and say, okay, Mapaka, he might be the next who can lead in attack. So there is a conveyor belt that does produce the players, but you never know if they're going to be as successful as this bunch have been for Australia. And therein lies the challenge. You have to give them a little bit of exposure, whether it's at the one-day international level. I don't think you can judge too much from a T20 perspective, but the 10 overs where you can use the new ball as well as you possibly can and then show the control a little bit later. I think that might be the time where they kind of maybe start to rest from that one, maybe go and play some leagues and then finish off with the test arena.
You mentioned Kagiso Rabada there, whose record stacks up with anybody, actually, when you look at average and particular strike rate. We don't have the numbers offhand, but he's as good as anybody, isn't he? He's coming back from a recent ban. What was the reaction to that in South Africa, or is it just kind of these things happen? It's one of those things, and he's back now.
Yeah, it was a bit. I must admit, when initially it came out, I thought it was more to do with cannabis, and that it was going to be sorted out as quickly as it. We went home from the RPL. We weren't sure. It was described as personal reasons up front. But obviously, I mean, they've been through the legitimate way of getting it processed, and the ban that came for that was obviously just the month with accepting guilt. So, I mean, from our perspective, it's fantastic. I was really concerned as soon as the news came through. I thought, oh no, if he misses the Test Championship, it could be a real damn squid, because I mean, he is so good. You talk about his facts. His strike rate's better than anyone else in the game, and he's done 300 wickets and 800 deliveries quicker than anyone else. So he doesn't always get the kudos that he probably deserves. I mean, he probably hasn't performed as well in England, actually, as what he's done for us all around the world. So it's a real opportunity for him to stand up, and I think he'll be determined. He's also a guy who's really enjoying his cricket at the moment. When he burst onto the scene, he was an 18, 19-year-old kid, and he was kind of playing with guys who were maybe 8 to 10 years older than him. He's now, the rest of them have all caught up. So all the kids that he kind of played SA schools with and went through the age groups with are now in his team. And he's kind of surrounded by his mates rather than just the teammates, if that makes any sense. And he's got a smile on his face. You can see he's up for everything. He's talked a lot about how he's actually enjoyed the setup and having the camaraderie of all his mates around him. And it's kind of producing the best for him.
And he has a 5-wicket haul at Lords last time they were there against England. What is, I know we let off about Stuart Broad being involved and whatever. What is the key to A, bowling in England, and B, bowling at Lords? What would you, if they had rung you up and said, Polly, what's the key? What is the key at bowling at Lords?
Give them free advice now. They can all
yeah, we can all listen to the
free
podcast.
advice
Well,
from
I
the
think
big
I think the Aussies probably would have worked it out. It's all about the length, isn't it? I mean, for us in South Africa, we hover around being slightly shorter because we can and get away with it, and everything carries, and even the nicks with the extra bounce tends to carry to the slip cord. Sometimes in the UK, you get people like Mark Atherton who play with those soft hands, and just knock it down before the slip cord. So that's the key, first of all. And then the second of all is you can use the slope to your advantage at Lords, particularly coming from the pavilion end. You can go with a slightly wider line because everyone who gets there thinks, oh, it's going to nip down the slope, and they end up playing it some more. The other point I would have said is when you're bowling from the commentary box end or nursery ground end, make sure your slip cordon's closer, because the slope goes the other way. It kind of dies on you, and you've got to make sure that those slips are as close as can be. And sometimes the straight delivery is just as effective as anything else here at Lords because of all the idiosyncrasies that go in with the ground.
Now, if you were bowling at Sam Constas in the first over of a test match and he got down and scooped you over third split, what would your reaction be?
I would be surprised, but not surprised anymore. I mean, that's the nature of the game, isn't it? If one of you did it to me now, that would be a different story. I'd be absolutely shocked. But I think
Who was the most adventurous opener that you bowled at? Did you bowl at Saywag?
Yeah, Very was probably one of the most attacking. Chris Gale was probably attacking. I think the ones who tried to be adventurous were Clayton Lambert and Philo Wallace. I think they'd been very very aggressive against the England team in the Caribbean that one year, and then they came to South Africa and it was a bit of a different kettle of fish. The ball was bouncing and pinging through, and they didn't go so successful. But yeah, we didn't get faced with too many. I can still remember to this day the first person who paddled me was Kruger van Wyk in a provincial game. And he got down and left me over the keeper. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, what do I do now? I'm supposed to be bowling a Yorker, and like I can't do that anymore. So I can just imagine what it feels like in a test match.
Do you ever get frustrated? Difficult question for you to answer. And it's probably the nicest I'm ever going to be to you. You ever get frustrated you don't get named sometimes? When we look back and we talk about Callis and Smith and Stokes and all these people, your stats were quite unbelievable as a cricketer. I think you were over 25 with the bat in both ODI and Test cricket, and under 25 with the ball. Do you think you get forgotten a little bit?
Oh, I don't know if you forgotten. I mean, you can understand there's certain ways you go about your game. I didn't have the flash of a Brett Lee or a Shoaib Akhtar to create that much excitement. Maybe initially in my career, I hit Ath on the head a few times, and that created a bit of excitement for some of the English fans. But no, I mean, I know what I was. I was just about being consistent. And, I wasn't the flamboyance of even someone like a Shane Warne or anything like that. I didn't have any theatrics to my game. So, you probably appreciate the stats and say, okay, he was good at that while he was around, but let's move on to the more entertaining bunch that are currently around.
Well, you two are part of the elite commentary team for this.
Good point. Good word.
But now listen, what about support-wise? We got to have all the support, surely at this ground.
Give us a prediction.
Well, okay, I'll go first of all. So I'll go down the support route. So everyone from England's going to be supporting us. There's going to be plenty of South Africans because they've flown over and they live here. Everyone in the subcontinent keeps telling us that team to pick Pakistan, India, Bangladesh. They always say South Africa is your second pick, so they'll support us. The only team that might not be behind us because of what the efforts that Tony Gregg did was the Sri Lankans. He did a wonderful marketing strategy with keeping Australia and Sri Lanka close, so they might be supporting them. So I'm not going to bluff you. The support will be in our favor. And then we go and look down to this year. We won't go down the route of Arsenal because they won nothing again. But Crystal Palace, Newcastle, who else was there? PSG, Tottenham, Rory McIlroy. All of them have waited this massive long period of time to win a trophy. And could this be the year where South Africa manages to put it off?
To do that, they have to overcome the psychological barriers of South Africa in finals, semi-finals, knockout games. Because it's Test cricket, is it different? Or will there be any kind of psychology going on?
You've got 5 days to get over it. I'll tell you where the psychology lies. We had a chat with old Matthew Hayden in the build-up to this Test match. And he was saying in that 2005 Six Tour, they won that first game at Lord's comfortably, right? And they did something pretty rash and pretty arrogant of themselves. Is after everyone from the England team had left, they've got that team song. And they went into the England dressing room and they sang it and everything went pear-shaped. McGrath stood on the ball after that and they got a hardy, right, in the rest of the series. So I think one of the big things will be when the coin goes up, who gets the home dressing room? I think that will be a major point because if they have to go into the England dressing room, they might think that's a bit of a hoodoo for them. South Africa, we've played nicely. We love coming here. It's something special about Lords. I think most of the performances they have there have been pretty good. But I think the key for us is that we don't have it going down to kind of one moment. Invariably in test matches, you kind of win it and going into the last 2 or 3 sessions that you're either going to win or you're going to lose. So hopefully we won't have any moment where we can maybe get a bit concerned and not produce our best.
Nasser's going to win. One word.
It's not asking me to choose between me two lads now. I mean, it's like, Australia or South Africa, which is worse, that? Which will cause me more pain?
Do me a favor. Do me a favor.
I'd have to say,
cause you pain.
If South Africa win, I will never hear the end of it from Pollock. So for once in my life, I'm going to go Australia. But it would be a nice story if South Africa win, just so I can see your rant in the Times about South Africa winning the World Test Championship, Atherton.
Well, I think it's going to be quite nice for your caption for this podcast. You can be Hussain backs Australia ahead of the
Or
Ashes.
South Africa.
Yeah,
Or
ahead of
South
the
Africa.
Ashes, Hussain backs Australia.
Or South
Polly,
Africa.
just before we let you go, and thank you for coming on again. It's always a
All good.
pleasure to speak to you. Just England play India and then England play Australia. How do you see it? How do you see those two series going?
Yeah, from my perspective, I'd be a bit concerned about your bowling. That's the only one for me. I think you've got some batters, and I think if they apply themselves in certain ways and maybe don't be over aggressive at certain times and maybe show a little bit of adaptability, I think there's no issues there whatsoever. I'm just concerned about your bowling department, both going against the likes of what India can produce from a bowling perspective, and then also the art of being able to be successful on Australian conditions with a kookaburra rather than having English conditions with a Duke. So that would be my concerns. If they can show some form, if someone can step up and show that there's consistency and ability to pick up those 20 wickets easy enough, then maybe it might be different. But from now, with not having seen really as much of them as obviously in the domestic setup like you guys had seen, I'd be a little bit concerned about your bowling.
Shaun Pollock thinks that England will get hammered by India and in the Ashes. Thank you,
Listen,
Shaun.
just remember that I said we didn't send our best team to New Zealand. You said you sent us the C team. So you've already badmouthed our team about all the things we've done. So you just get back in your box.
It's great to see you. We'll catch up over the next 5-6 days at Lords. Obviously, enjoy
just
this
like
match.
the sun shining on your face, the sun's going to shine in South Africa.
Well, gorgeous. And we'll see you at the end of the summer in any event when South Africa are here. What is it? 3
Yeah.
ODIs and 3 T20s? I've forgotten.
Yes,
What? Yeah.
six games. That's it.
Grand. Okay. Thanks for joining us. Excellent as always.
All good, guys.
Stuart Broad
Cheers,
looking
Polly.
very good in South African green, by the way.
Good for him.
Yeah, fantastic to see Polly, one of cricket's nice guys. And as you say, I don't know whether he does get forgotten, but I played a lot against Shaun Pollock and he was a fantastic cricketer. People forget a little bit how sharp he was. I played in his first test, his debut test, maiden test match at Centurion. I think he hit me on the head 3 times before lunch on that first morning. He was incredibly sharp but he was so close to the stumps and that high action, and his bouncer always nipped back. It was really tough to get out of the way of. Anyway, fantastic all-round cricketer, as you say.
I don't agree with you that he's nicer in the combox than he was as a bowler, to be honest. So I'm going the other way round. He's constantly having a go at us. If England are struggling, he's first one on the WhatsApp group to let us know. But he thoroughly decent.
Well,
bloke
we've
and
had a bit of
very good
ammunition
cricket.
with the way South Africa have gone in World Cup semi-finals. Anyway, I wish them well this week. Now, we've been travelling around a bit. I was in Bristol. You weren't there. You were in Durham. I wasn't there.
It's been
But
good.
we're all there for the ODIs, and we've seen Harry Brook. So this is being recorded the day before the last T20, obviously 2 days before the start of the World Test Championship final, and 5 from 5 for Harry Brook so far. So a perfect start.
It is. I mean, I did the first game in the T20, like you said, and West Indies were poor in that. I always felt that their T20 has been shown historically much closer to England than the 50 over stuff. They've won that World T20 twice, and you look at the style of players they have and the hard hitters. And I think they missed Akil Hussain in that first game, and they didn't set the tone in the power play. And then weren't great with the ball. But I was really impressed. And I know you did an interview with him. I saw at Bristol, and he wouldn't give you much, Liam Dawson, but it was so nice to see Liam Dawson back. He'd been waiting so long, and the build-up of everyone saying, if you went on social media, Hampshire, everyone, get Liam Dawson in. And when he got in, sometimes it's like, okay, but actually he showed why there's been such a call out for him to come back in the side. He bowled beautifully.
Yeah, it was a good comeback from him. Maybe a couple of questions I asked were unfair, but there is a broader context to it, isn't there? He's back for T20s. There's no reason why he couldn't be a multi-format player. I mean, he's 35, is he now? Which is not old for a spinner. He obviously brings a bit with the bat. It was
Your
probably not
second spinner
said
in
it's
the Ashes.
second spinner to Shoaib Bashir. But I mean, of course, he is the classic example of how the times have changed, really, because you wouldn't say Liam Dawson is an elite cricketer in the sense that he's first name on the team sheet. He's been a fringe England cricketer. He was first picked a decade ago, but he's only played 21 matches for England in that time, which means he's been there or thereabouts, but on the fringes. Now, in our day, if you're one of those cricketers, the massive difference between going on an England tour or what were your opportunities otherwise. I don't know what you'd be doing. You have to get another job somewhere in England in the winter.
Welcome to real life in the winter,
Yeah,
basically. Yeah.
absolutely. Go deliver Christmas trees or something.
Yeah.
And now, of course, his opportunities, whether it's SA, T20, IL20, whatever it is, are fantastic. And of course, that is a great thing for cricketers of his ilk. But it also means that the question I asked him, 20 years ago, if you said to somebody you're going to get picked on an Ashes tour and you'll go as second spinner, they'd absolutely snap your hand off. Whereas
And
now, for somebody like him, the financial discrepancies there are fairly acute. So it is not a straightforward question to answer.
and reactions have to be different. Could you imagine 20 years ago if the reaction was, well, I don't know, am I going to play? If not, if I'm only going to carry the drinks, I'll go and
Yeah.
earn money everywhere else. And 20 years ago, everyone went, well, you don't want to play for England, you don't want to play in the Ashes, go on an Ashes squad. I think we do have to react differently, that he is much sought after, he is going to make a lot of money, and that is for him better than carrying the drinks. There's debate whether England will play a frontline spinner anyway. So maybe Liam Dawson would be a good answer to that sort of debate. So that's for the future. What I watched most of that game, it was all about the bees at Bristol, wasn't it? Banton, Bethel, Butler, Brook, all just smashed it everywhere.
Yeah, it always. I mean, West Indies had a barnstorming finish. I mean, it's another interesting point about the balance of England's side because they only play two seamers and all those spinners, and at a ground like Bristol, we saw it at Cardiff a little bit as well. You then leave yourself quite vulnerable at the back end, or you can do. And of course, Adil Rashid had to bowl that 19th over, and as good a bowler as Adil Rashid is, that is a heavy risk at a ground like Bristol. I mean, even me and you could plink a 6 or 2 at Bristol. So he went for 31, which lifted West Indies to 190. But it felt, I mean, we had Luke Wood in the pod, and he just didn't even think they'd got anywhere near enough. He thought they were 30.
That is, though, I saw the tweet with you and Simon Dool at the end. That is the one question they've not really answered. And it was something we were debating on the Champions Trophy about the balance of the side is how do you get, and who is the four seamer without weakening your batting or bowling?
Well, I suspect that if Jamie Overton's fit, obviously he's got a broken finger, he's just been selected in England's Test match squad. If he's fit, he might come in for Will Jacks because that gives you an extra seam. We're talking on a ground that maybe is vulnerable to spin, or if conditions are more seam friendly. He could bat at 7, couldn't he, and not weaken the batting and give you that extra seam bowling option. So I suspect that maybe. Well, Harry Brook seems to like the balance. We asked him about the balance. He's right for it, but he might not be right for it if his spinner keeps going for 31 in the 19th over of a T20 game on a postage stamp.
Okay, we touched upon it with Polly there. Can I ask you this could be a whole pod. Maybe this should be our next pod, actually. You were at the World Cricket Connect thing at Lord's, and the great and good of the game were there and talking about it. Is it a concern that we've now had 6 women's game, 5 men's game, a test match against Zimbabwe, and there has not been much competitive cricket? Are we now reaping what we've sowed in how the game has gone and how the haves are moving away from the have-nots? Or is it just wait and see what happens in the future? What do you think?
I think the danger is always sometimes you take a few games and then, you create a drama or a crisis out of them. But I think the point is well made. It's interesting, actually, at the World Cricket Connects, I said hello to Chris Daring, who is the new CEO of West Indies Cricket. He's taken over from Johnny Grave. And Chris has not been in cricket since 2007. He organised the World Cup in the Caribbean in 2007 and then went off to do other things. And he's come back as their CEO. And of course, it's very interesting when you talk to somebody who's had that distance from the game and come back into the game. Because when Chris first got involved in West Indies cricket, the balance sheets between England and West Indies would have been pretty even. Sky had only just come into taking over, the broadcasting of English cricket. That was 2005. So there wasn't that much difference before then between the balance sheets and the bottom line of ECB and West Indies Cricket Board. Now, of course, it's an unbelievable difference. So you are seeing, because of market forces and because of the economics of the game, it's an unusual game, isn't it? Dominated economically and population-wise by one country. And so those economics are extreme. And for West Indies, New Zealand, there are stark consequences. I mean, New Zealand have remained competitive. West Indies have been uncompetitive in this series. And you're right. And I've always felt that's one of the advantages or disadvantages that international cricket has over franchise cricket. And one of the advantages that franchise cricket has is that you can take players from across the boundaries. You can make a team competitive by dint of an auction or a draft or whatever it is every year. And that's been one of the successes of the IPL, hasn't it? But in a system where the economic differences between the participants are so stark, which is how it's become in cricket, then you are in danger of a competitive imbalance. And that's why it's so important for the likes of India and England and Australia to act in the greater interest. You might call it enlightened self-interest. It's in their interest that everybody else is competitive, because you need a competitive world game. So that would be my answer to that. I don't have any easy solutions, by the way.
I need to add no more than what you have just said. I think you summed it up brilliantly.
So that's where we are.
Yeah.
You're off to Lords.
Yeah. See you there.
again.
Sweet,
I'll be
lovely
there.
lunch upstairs.
I'll be doing a bit of writing and scribbling. We
Yeah.
probably don't get as nice a lunch as you these days, then, if I'm
Good
not
point. Yeah.
dating. But enjoy the game, call it well, and I'll catch up with you there. And we'll do a pod on the back end of it and see what's what after that game.